She had been awake before the first light ever touched the alien sky. Every morning, the cold metal of her cage reminded her of the years she had spent in this place. She counted the days, though the numbers blurred together after so long. Time in captivity had a way of flattening itself, making yesterday and 100 yesterdays feel the same. The cage was small, too small to stretch her limbs, but it was familiar. The familiarity was a comfort and a curse at the same time. She had stopped hoping. The guards passed by, their heavy boots clanging against the metal floor. They did not see her as a creature with thoughts, feelings, or dreams. To them, she was just another specimen, just another number to keep in the records. She had tried to talk to them once to plead for kindness, but their faces had remained blank. It was a language she did not understand and a lesson she learned quickly. No one would come for her. Outside the cage, other prisoners stirred. Some were from her world, some from other planets. All shared the same weariness. They had faces marked by the years of abuse, hands worn down by work, and eyes that flickered with the last sparks of life. Occasionally, they would whisper to one another, sharing fragments of memory and hope, but even whispers could not pierce the heavy chains of despair. She touched the cold metal bars, running her fingers along the grooves until her hands ached. Once long ago, she had known freedom, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the wind that carried sense of life and flowers, the feeling of grass beneath her feet. Now even the memory of it felt distant, almost unreal. A sudden vibration shook the floor beneath the cages. She froze. The sound was faint at first, almost like a hum, but it grew louder, filling the facility with a trembling resonance. The guards tensed, their eyes narrowing, scanning the corridors. Whispers spread quickly among the prisoners, though many dared not even look up. Something was coming. The vibration turned into a roar, metallic and fierce. The doors of the cages rattled. She pressed herself into the corner, fear and instinct wrestling within her. She had survived so long by staying still, by making herself invisible. She had learned the ways of the captors, the patterns of their patrols, the timing of their meals, and the moments when their attention faltered. But this was new. This was something they had not anticipated. The doors of her cage shook violently. A loud crack split the air as one of the panels bent outward. She froze, unable to move, unable to even breathe properly. The cage had been her prison, but now it trembled as if it sensed the change in the world around it. A figure appeared in the corridor, moving with a speed and precision that made the guards stumble backward. It was unlike any creature she had seen before. Tall, solidly built, with a presence that seemed to fill the entire space. His movements were fluid, deliberate, and every step carried the weight of purpose. The guards tried to respond. Weapons rose, claws extended, but the figure did not hesitate. With a series of swift motions, he disarmed them, throwing some back against the walls, others crashing into the floor. The prisoners watched in disbelief as the humans fell, or rather, as the humans failed. Not a single guard could stand against the speed, the cleverness, and the fearlessness of this warrior. She could hardly believe her eyes. Stories of humans had reached her world, but they were always tales told with doubt and exaggeration. Humans were weak, they said. Humans could not survive in harsh conditions. Yet here one stood, turning the tide of a facility that had seemed unbreakable for decades. He moved toward the cages. His gaze swept over them, assessing, calculating, but not judging. When it landed on her, she felt something shift inside her. He paused, meeting her eyes, and in that moment she felt seen for the first time in years. Not as an experiment, not as property, not as a number, just a being who deserved to exist. With surprising gentleness, he began unlocking the cages one by one. The metallic clink of the keys echoed through the hall, a sound that stirred emotions she thought she had lost. Freedom felt fragile, almost unreal, but the possibility of it was intoxicating. The prisoners hesitated at first. Fear had been their companion for so long that stepping into the unknown seemed more dangerous than staying in chains. But the human did not rush them. He waited, offering his hand, a silent promise that he would not abandon them. When he reached her, he held out his hand. She hesitated. Years of captivity had taught her caution, had taught her that trust could be deadly. But something in his eyes told her that this was different. Slowly, she took his hand. Strength surged through her, not just his but her own, the courage she had forgotten she possessed. They moved together through the corridors. The sounds of battle followed them, guards shouting, metal clanging, but the human moved with a purpose that inspired everyone who saw him. He created openings where none existed, led them through shadows and debris, and seemed always to be one step ahead of danger. She began to notice the small things. The way he adjusted his grip to protect the slow or injured. The way he assessed every path, every obstacle, calculating risks with precision. The way he never left anyone behind, never faltered, never allowed despair to take root. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. Hope was dangerous, yes, but it was also alive. It breathed in the air that filled the halls, in the sounds of the humans' movements, in the sight of cages emptying, in the realization that escape was possible. The corridors twisted and turned, but the human never lost his way. He guided them past collapsed walls, through narrow ventilation shafts, overheated floors, and under alarms that blared warnings. Each step brought them closer to the unknown freedom outside, yet each step carried risk. She learned quickly that this human's strength was not just physical. It was his mind, his ability to see possibilities where others saw none. At one point, a section of the corridor collapsed behind them, cutting off their pursuers. She turned briefly to see the human stand firm, using debris as a shield to hold back a squad of guards. He did not wait for safety, he created it. The prisoners moved past him, following without question, their disbelief mingled with awe. They reached a larger chamber, a place that seemed to have once been a hub for operations. Panels flickered with warning lights, machines groaned under strain. Here the human paused. He gestured for them to stay back while he assessed the situation. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the strategy forming in an instant. And then, with swift, precise motions, he turned the machines against the guards. Doors slammed, barriers dropped, alarms rerouted. Chaos erupted, but this chaos was controlled, directed, purposeful. The human moved through it all like a force of nature, untouchable and unstoppable. She watched, fascinated as he fought, not just with strength, but with cleverness, creativity, and determination. Each movement, each choice was a lesson in resilience, a testament to the power of the human spirit. She realized that this was why humans were feared, why stories of them spread across galaxies. They did not just survive, they adapted, they resisted, and they inspired others to resist with them. Finally, the path to the outer doors was clear. The human turned to them, and for a moment there was no battle, no danger, no fear, just the possibility of freedom. He extended his hand once more, and this time, when she took it, she felt it not as a promise, but as an opening. She stepped forward, leaving the cage behind, leaving years of despair behind. Every step felt like reclaiming a part of herself she had thought lost forever. The air outside the cage smelled different, alive, charged with opportunity. She breathed it in deeply, feeling the weight of captivity lift, even if only a little. Behind them, the alarms still blared, but she no longer felt the same fear. The human walked beside her not as a savior, but as a guide, a fellow traveler in the pursuit of freedom. And for the first time in years, she believed that she might not just survive, she might live. As they reached the outer corridors of the facility, she glanced back one last time. The cages, the guards, the darkness of the past, they were still there, but they no longer had power over her. She had seen what courage looked like, what hope could do, and what humans could achieve even against impossible odds. Her life had been one of despair, but now, with the human beside her, a new chapter began. The cage that had defined her existence no longer held her. The walls that had contained her spirit had been broken. And as she stepped into the unknown, she realized that freedom was not just a place. It was a choice, and she was choosing to live. The corridors outside the cages were chaotic. Alarms screamed, red lights flashed, and the air was thick with smoke from broken machinery. Yet in the middle of it all, the human moved with calm purpose. He did not run blindly. He did not panic. Every step he took was calculated, measured, and decisive. She followed him, her heart pounding in her chest. Her legs ached from long years of confinement, but the adrenaline surged through her, giving her strength she did not know she still possessed. Around her, other prisoners stumbled, some frightened, some limping, but all moving forward because he was leading them. The human had a presence that demanded attention, not by force, but by certainty. The first obstacle appeared quickly. A large door, reinforced and locked with complex systems, blocked their path. The prisoners hesitated. They had never seen anything like it, and most had assumed it would be impossible to open. But the human knelt by the panel, his fingers moving over the controls. He did not fumble or panic. His eyes scanned every symbol, every wire, every switch, as if he had been born understanding them. With a sharp click, the door began to slide open. The sound echoed through the facility, but instead of fear, a spark of hope stirred among the prisoners. She glanced at him, trying to read his face, and found only focus, determination, and a strange kind of kindness. He did not look at them with pity. He looked at them as equals, as beings worth saving, not as experiments or property. They stepped through the door into a wider hallway. Here, the battle with the guards was fiercer. Groups of them tried to intercept the escapees, but the human anticipated every move. He threw debris to block them, used shadows to hide the prisoners, and when needed, he engaged the guards directly. He did not fight to kill, he fought to protect, to create openings, to buy time. She had never seen fighting like this. It was not about sheer strength or weapons. It was about intelligence, adaptability, and courage. Each move seemed designed to confuse the enemy, to exploit weaknesses, to give the helpless a chance. She realized then that this human had something other species often lacked, a refusal to accept the impossible. The prisoners began to mirror his confidence. One by one, they found their courage. The smallest of them, the weakest, learned to follow his lead. They moved faster, ducking under obstacles, leaping over broken machinery, and helping one another when someone faltered. It was as if his presence had awakened a long-dormant strength inside them. She kept her eyes on him, noticing the details. His hands were steady even under pressure. His eyes scanned constantly, always aware, always prepared. His breathing was calm, controlled, despite the chaos. She realized this was what made humans different. While other species relied on power, humans relied on intelligence, creativity, and a stubborn refusal to give up. The next challenge came suddenly. A squad of guards had anticipated their route and blocked the corridor ahead. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy and their claws flexed in anticipation. The prisoners froze. She felt panic rising, but the human did not flinch. He crouched, his gaze calculating, and then he acted. In moments that felt like seconds stretched into eternity, he used his environment to his advantage. Loose panels became shields, pipes became distractions, and sparks from broken wiring blinded the guards. He moved swiftly, a blur of motion, guiding the prisoners around the danger. She followed, her heart racing, her body moving on instinct more than thought. Once they were past the ambush, he paused for a moment, letting them catch their breath. The prisoners huddled together, exhausted, terrified, but alive. She dared a glance around. The facility was enormous, its corridors twisting and turning in ways that seemed designed to trap the unwary. Yet the human never hesitated. He knew where to go, which paths to take, and how to keep everyone safe. They entered a room filled with broken machinery and discarded tools. The human motioned for them to rest briefly. He moved among them, checking on the injured, offering reassurance and encouraging even the most fearful to keep going. She watched him, realizing that this was not just a rescue. This was a lesson. Humanity did not abandon others. Humanity did not see chains and accept them. Humanity fought for those who could not fight for themselves. She wanted to speak, to ask how he knew what to do, how he could stay calm, how he could inspire courage. But words failed her. She only nodded, letting him know she was ready to follow. He smiled briefly, a small gesture, but it carried warmth, understanding, and confidence. They moved again, deeper into the facility, taking paths that twisted and turned like a maze. The human led them with precision, using every trick he knew. He ducked under low-hanging pipes, pushed debris out of the way, and even used broken machinery to create distractions that allowed them to slip past guards unnoticed. Each move was deliberate, each step calculated to maximize their chances of survival. Along the way, the protagonist began to notice the reactions of the other prisoners. Fear was still there, but hope was growing. Small sparks of courage appeared in their eyes. They began to mimic the human's movements, to anticipate dangers, to act without needing instruction. He had not just saved them from the cages, he had awakened something inside them, a sense of agency they had long thought lost. At one point, they reached a large chamber with multiple exits. The human stopped, scanning the space. The guards were regrouping, and the odds seemed impossible, yet he did not hesitate. He crouched low, whispering instructions to the prisoners, guiding them to safety through a combination of strategy and instinct. She followed, amazed at how easily he adapted to the shifting dangers. They moved quickly, slipping past enemies who thought the human would be predictable. He was anything but. Every move was unexpected, every action calculated to create openings where none seemed to exist. The prisoners followed, learning quickly, trusting in his decisions even when the path seemed impossible. As they approached the outer levels of the facility, the air changed. The smell of the alien world beyond reached them. She could feel the breeze, faint as it was, stirring her hair. She had dreamed of this moment for years, yet now that it was close, it felt almost unreal. Freedom was not just a thought, it was within reach. The human paused once more, turning to face the prisoners. He looked directly at her, and in his eyes she saw something extraordinary. There was no judgment, no condescension, no pity, only respect, only belief. He believed they could survive. He believed they deserved to survive, and in that belief she found courage she had long thought lost. They moved through the final corridors, guards falling behind, disoriented by the humans' tactics. The protagonist's heart pounded, but it was not fear. It was excitement, hope, and determination. She had learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about courage, intelligence, and refusing to give up no matter the odds. Finally, they reached the last door leading to the outside world. The human moved first, checking for traps, observing every detail. The prisoners waited, tense and silent, ready to follow. He pushed the door open, and sunlight poured in, filling the chamber with warmth and light. The smell of the open world, the feel of air unconfined, hit them all at once. She stepped forward, her feet touching solid ground outside the facility for the first time in years. She could hear the cries of guards behind them, but they no longer mattered. Freedom was ahead. Hope was alive. And beside her the human warrior stood, a figure of courage, determination, and humanity unlike anything she had ever known. She looked at him, and he nodded, silently telling her to keep moving, to keep living, to keep believing. She realized that the cage she had once thought would hold her forever was not just a prison of metal and locks. It had been a prison of fear and despair. And now she was free from both. The group moved away from the facility, deeper into the alien landscape. The world outside was unfamiliar, dangerous, and vast. But for the first time, the protagonist did not feel trapped. She felt alive. Every step, every breath, every movement was a reminder that she could survive, that she could fight, that she could live. The human walked beside her, never ahead, never behind, always steady. She realized that survival was not just about escaping danger. It was about having someone who believed in you, someone who showed you the way, someone who reminded you of your own strength. As they disappeared into the wilderness beyond the cages, she understood that this was only the beginning. The human had not just saved them from captivity. He had shown them a truth far greater. Humanity was not easily broken. Humanity did not abandon those in need. Humanity fought, adapted, and endured against impossible odds. And now she would fight too. The alien sky stretched wide above them, painted with hues of deep violet and sharp streaks of orange as twin suns began to set. The group moved carefully through the jagged terrain, leaving the broken facility behind, but the danger was far from over. The air was filled with tension. Every rustle of strange foliage, every movement in the shadows could signal the approach of their pursuers. The prisoners had escaped the cages, but survival in this alien wilderness required more than freedom. It required skill, courage, and trust. The human warrior led them steadily. He had slowed his pace slightly, giving the prisoners a chance to catch up, but he never let them fall behind. His eyes scanned the landscape constantly, noting every ridge, every rock, every shadow where danger might hide. Though his movements appeared effortless, there was an intensity in his gaze, a focus sharpened by years of training, experience, and instinct. She struggled to keep pace, her muscles stiff from years of confinement. Yet each step reminded her that she was alive, that she had the chance to feel the wind on her face and the uneven ground beneath her feet. She glanced around at the others, seeing the mixture of fear, awe, and tentative hope reflected in their eyes. None had spoken much since leaving the facility. Words were unnecessary. The human's actions communicated more than words ever could. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The low, mechanical growl of engines reached their ears before the shapes of the pursuers emerged over a distant ridge. Alien vehicles, bristling with weapons, were speeding toward them. The prisoners froze, panic threatening to overtake them. She could feel it in their hesitation, in their wide-eyed stares, in the tremble of hands that had never held weapons. The human did not flinch. He turned to face the group, his expression calm and resolute. Without a word, he gestured for them to follow him along a narrow, winding path that led into a dense thicket of alien plants. The pursuers were faster on open ground, but through the thick vegetation their speed would be limited. As they moved, the human kept a careful pace, glancing back occasionally to ensure no one had fallen behind. He taught them, silently, the art of movement through dangerous terrain. Step lightly, move slowly, stay low, and never make unnecessary noise. The prisoners began to mirror him, hesitating at first, then with growing confidence, learning that every step taken with care could mean the difference between capture and escape. The alien pursuers were relentless. They fired energy pulses into the thicket, lighting up the darkness with flashes of blue and red. Trees and rocks exploded under the assault, but the human moved with precision. guiding the prisoners to cover, using the landscape as a shield. She felt her heart hammering in her chest, but every time fear threatened to overwhelm her, she looked at him and drew strength from his calm determination. Hours seemed to pass in what could have been minutes. The human led them across rocky ridges, through shallow streams, and over steep slopes. He instructed them silently with gestures, hand signals, and eye contact. By observing him, they learned to move efficiently, to read the terrain, to anticipate danger. Even the most fearful prisoners began to trust themselves, realizing that they could survive if they followed his lead. At one point, they reached a narrow canyon, its walls towering and jagged. The humans stopped and studied the path ahead. The pursuers would have difficulty following them through such a tight space, but it would require careful maneuvering. He pointed toward a ledge that ran along the canyon wall, barely wide enough for a single footstep. She felt a surge of fear. One misstep could send her tumbling hundreds of feet below, but he did not hesitate. He moved first, testing the footing, then gestured for the prisoners to follow. Step by step, they crossed the ledge. The wind howled and rocks shifted beneath their feet, but the human remained steady, offering guidance and encouragement. She realized then that fear could be managed, controlled, and even transformed into focus. By observing him, she learned to trust her own instincts, to move with precision to survive. Once across, the canyon opened into a valley filled with strange, glowing vegetation. The beauty of the alien world was breathtaking, but there was no time to admire it. The pursuers were still in the distance, and the human led them through the valley with speed and care, ensuring that no one lagged behind. Along the way, he taught them to use the environment strategically, rocks for cover, plants to mask their movement, shadows to hide in. She began to notice a change within herself. The fear that had dominated her life for years was still present, but it was no longer paralyzing. Each challenge they overcame, each step forward despite danger, strengthened her resolve. She felt her body growing stronger, her mind sharper, and her courage more certain. She realized that survival was not just a matter of fleeing from danger. It was about learning, adapting, and refusing to give in. As night fell, the valley transformed. The glowing plants cast eerie light, creating shadows that shifted with the wind. The human gathered the prisoners in a small clearing, checking each of them for injuries and exhaustion. Some were limping, others had cuts and bruises, but all were alive. He did not offer words of comfort. His presence and actions were enough to reassure them. They knew he would not abandon them, and that knowledge was more powerful than any speech. The group rested briefly, drinking water from a small stream and tending to minor injuries. She noticed the human examining the terrain around them, ensuring there were no surprises. His vigilance was constant. He never allowed himself to relax completely, knowing that danger could return at any moment. She admired his discipline, his awareness, and his unwavering commitment to their survival. While they rested, she looked at the others. She saw their transformation as well. Fear was still present, but courage was growing. They had begun to move with purpose, to trust their instincts, and to rely on one another. The human had not only saved them from captivity, he had taught them how to survive, how to fight, and how to believe in themselves again. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the valley. The pursuers had discovered their trail. The human sprang to his feet immediately, signaling the group to move again. There was no hesitation, no panic, only precise action. He led them toward a series of rocky outcrops that offered protection and high ground. Each prisoner followed, moving with growing confidence, learning to navigate the alien landscape with skill and speed. The pursuers closed in, firing intermittently, but the human used the terrain to his advantage. He led the group along paths that forced the enemies to slow down, to expose themselves, to become vulnerable. She marveled at his ability to turn the natural environment into a weapon, to use strategy and intelligence in ways that seemed impossible. As the battle for survival intensified, the human demonstrated something extraordinary. He did not fight recklessly. He fought to protect, to buy time, to create opportunities for the others. When the pursuers broke through a narrow path, he diverted them, using speed, deception, and cunning to mislead and confuse. The prisoners began to understand that the human's power was not in brute force alone. It was in his mind, his ability to think several steps ahead, and his refusal to yield to fear. Hours passed in a blur of movement, strategy, and endurance. The human never stopped, never faltered, never allowed despair to take hold. Each obstacle they overcame, each close call they survived, strengthened the prisoner's resolve. She felt a deep respect for him growing in her heart, a recognition that his strength was something unique to humanity. By dawn, the group had reached a safer location, a rocky plateau overlooking the facility they had escaped. The alien sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the terrain. From this vantage point, she could see the scope of their journey, the dangers they had overcome, and the vast world that now lay before them. The human gathered them once more, his eyes meeting hers. No words were needed. She understood that this was only the beginning of their journey. Freedom had been won, but survival required more than escape. It required courage, intelligence, and the will to continue, no matter the odds. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope that was not fragile or fleeting. She had seen what humans could do, how they thought, how they inspired courage in others. She realized that her captivity had not destroyed her. It had only delayed the awakening of her own strength. With the human leading them, she believed they could survive anything, face any danger, and overcome any obstacle. The plateau offered a brief respite. They rested, tended to wounds, and prepared for the next stage of their journey. The human remained vigilant, scanning the horizon, watching for any sign of pursuit. His discipline was unyielding, his commitment absolute. She felt a deep admiration for him, and for the first time, a sense of belonging. She was part of a group that had survived impossible odds, guided by a being who embodied courage, intelligence, and humanity in its purest form. As the sun rose higher, casting light on the alien landscape, she realized that the world was no longer something to fear. It was something to explore, to survive in, and perhaps one day to thrive in. The human had not only saved her from the cages, he had opened her eyes to the possibilities of life beyond fear. And as they moved forward, descending from the plateau into the unknown terrain below, she understood that this journey was far from over. The pursuers were still out there, danger lurked in every shadow, and the world itself was unpredictable. But she also understood something more important. Humanity, with all its courage, intelligence, and determination, was a force unlike any other. And as long as she walked beside them, she would never be helpless again. The landscape stretched before them like a wild, untamed world. Mountains rose sharply in the distance, and dense forests filled the valleys below. The alien wind carried strange scents, sharp, sweet, and unfamiliar, but it was alive, and it reminded her that the world outside the cages was real. For the first time in years, she felt the air on her face and the ground beneath her feet as something more than confinement. It was freedom, but freedom had a cost, and danger followed close behind. The human led the group with steady determination. His movements were precise and deliberate. He did not rush, but he did not hesitate. Every step, every decision was made with a purpose. She followed him closely, noting the way he scanned the horizon, how his eyes calculated distances and angles, and how he seemed to anticipate danger before it arrived. She realized that this was not mere skill. It was a way of thinking, a mindset that allowed humans to survive in impossible situations. As they moved through a narrow valley, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Alien vehicles rumbled over rocky ground, their engines screaming, their lights cutting through the fading daylight. She could see the shadows of armed guards moving along the ridges above. Fear began to creep in, but the human remained calm. He stopped briefly, signaling the prisoners to take cover behind boulders and thick vegetation. He crouched low, observing the enemy forces. Then, with a sudden movement, he darted out to a higher rock formation, using it as a vantage point. From there, he could see the full scope of the pursuit and plot their path forward. Without a word, he gestured to the group to move in a zigzag pattern, keeping low, using shadows and terrain to remain hidden. Every motion was designed to protect them, every decision calculated to maximize survival. She felt a mixture of awe and hope. For years, she had believed escape impossible. She had thought that cages, walls, and chains could hold her forever. But here was a human showing her that freedom was not only possible, it could be taken, fought for, and defended. His presence reminded her that even when the odds seemed insurmountable, intelligence, courage, and determination could create a path forward. The group moved cautiously through the valley. The human scanned constantly, signaling changes in direction with quick gestures. The prisoners followed, learning to move as he did, silently and efficiently. Each step became easier as fear gave way to confidence. They had begun to understand that survival was not only about speed, it was about observation, adaptation, and clever action. Suddenly, a bridge of natural rock arched across a chasm ahead. Beyond it lay a plateau that could provide a temporary safe zone. The humans studied the structure, noting its stability and the best path across. The pursuers were closing fast, their shouts echoing through the valley. There was no hesitation. He turned and began crossing, signaling the group to follow carefully. Step by step, they moved across the narrow bridge. The wind gusted sharply, and the gap below was dizzying, but the human's steady pace inspired confidence. She felt her pulse quicken, not with fear, but with excitement and determination. She was learning to trust herself, to move with purpose, and to rely on the guidance of someone who knew how to survive. Once they reached the plateau, the human paused to survey the area. There was a small stream nearby and clusters of trees that could provide cover. The prisoners took a moment to rest, but the human's vigilance never wavered. He moved among them, checking for injuries, assessing their energy, and preparing them for the next stage of the journey. His actions were quiet but powerful, instilling a sense of confidence and resilience in those around him. She began to understand that the human way of surviving was not just about physical strength. It was about patience, observation, and strategy. It was about knowing when to move, when to rest, when to fight, and when to hide. It was about thinking several steps ahead, anticipating danger, and staying calm under pressure. This mindset was something she had never experienced before, and it gave her a new perspective on what it meant to be strong. The night fell, and with it came new challenges. The alien world was alive with nocturnal predators, some visible, some only hinted at by rustling plants and glowing eyes. The human gathered the group in a small clearing, keeping them close and quiet. He instructed them silently, pointing to safe paths and warning of potential threats. The prisoners followed his guidance, learning to navigate the darkness with awareness and caution. Hours passed in tense silence. The human remained alert, his eyes scanning the shadows, his ears tuned to every sound. The prisoners were exhausted, but they trusted him. His calmness was contagious, and even the weakest among them felt a growing sense of courage. She realized that his strength was not just in his body, it was in the way he inspired others to be strong as well. In the early hours of the morning, a distant rumble disturbed the quiet. The pursuers had not given up. Their determination was relentless, but the human was prepared. He led the group to a narrow cave, hidden behind thick vegetation. Inside, the shadows were deep, but it offered protection and a moment of safety. He instructed the prisoners to stay low, to keep silent, and to conserve energy. She watched as he moved to the entrance, listening and observing. He was ready for anything. When the pursuers arrived, he used the cave's natural defenses to his advantage. Rocks were dislodged to create barriers, echoes were used to confuse the enemies, and the narrow entrance limited the effectiveness of their attack. Once again, the human turned the environment into a weapon, using intelligence and strategy to protect those who could not protect themselves. The night was long, but eventually the pursuers moved on, unable to penetrate the defenses. The group emerged from the cave as the first light of dawn touched the alien world. She felt a surge of relief, but also a renewed determination. They had survived another challenge, and she knew that more would come. But she also knew that with the human leading them, they had a chance. A real chance. As they moved forward, the human taught them more than just survival skills. He showed them how to read the terrain, how to anticipate dangers, how to move with purpose. He encouraged them to notice details, to think ahead, and to trust their instincts. She found herself growing stronger, more confident, and more capable with every step. The fear that had dominated her life for years was gradually being replaced by courage, focus, and determination. By midday, they reached a ridge that overlooked a wide expanse of forest and plains. From this vantage point, they could see the path ahead and plan their next move. The human gathered them together, signaling the importance of observation and preparation. He did not speak, but his gestures conveyed strategy, foresight, and leadership. The prisoners watched and learned, realizing that survival was not just about reacting. It was about anticipating, adapting, and acting with intention. She looked at him, understanding more clearly than ever what made humans extraordinary. They were not invincible, but they were resilient. They were not the strongest, but they were clever, adaptive, and fearless when it mattered most. They inspired others to find strength within themselves, to believe in possibilities that others deemed impossible. She felt a deep respect and a growing sense of trust. With him, she believed they could face any danger and survive. As the day wore on, they continued their journey. The alien world was harsh and unpredictable, filled with challenges that tested their strength, endurance, and courage. But each obstacle they overcame together strengthened their bond, their confidence, and their hope. She realized that freedom was not just about leaving the cages behind. It was about learning to survive, to fight, and to live fully in a world that demanded resilience and intelligence. When night fell again, they found another hidden shelter, this one a shallow cave beneath a rocky overhang. The human ensured that everyone was safe and accounted for before resting himself. She watched him, noting the discipline, awareness, and vigilance that never wavered, even in moments of apparent rest. She understood that this was the essence of the human spirit: constant preparation, relentless focus, and unwavering courage. As they slept, she dreamed not of cages, but of possibilities. She dreamed of moving through the alien world with confidence, of using her mind and instincts to overcome danger, of standing alongside the human warrior who had changed her life forever. She realized that she had been given more than freedom. She had been given a chance to awaken her own courage, intelligence, and strength. When dawn broke again, she stepped outside the shelter, feeling the warmth of the sun and the vitality of life around her. The human was already scanning the horizon, planning the next stage of their journey. She joined him, ready, determined, and aware that survival required constant effort, courage, and awareness. She no longer feared the unknown. She welcomed it, knowing that with him and with the skills she had learned, they could face any challenge and prevail. The journey was far from over. The pursuers were relentless, the alien world was dangerous, and the future uncertain. But she was no longer helpless. She had learned to trust, to think, to move, and to fight. She had learned what it meant to survive and to live. And with the human warrior leading them, she knew that together they could overcome anything the galaxy might throw at them. The alien world stretched endlessly before them, a landscape of jagged mountains, dense forests, and open plains. The group had moved carefully for days, guided by the human warrior whose presence had transformed fear into courage. The prisoners were no longer timid, fragile beings. They had learned to survive, to think, to fight, and to trust. Yet the journey was far from over. Their pursuers were relentless, and the shadows of danger followed closely, waiting for the smallest misstep. The human paused at the edge of a wide plain. He surveyed the terrain with sharp eyes, calculating paths, risks, and advantages. The pursuers had tracked them here, and the open ground offered little cover. She felt a surge of anxiety, but he did not show hesitation. His calm determination was contagious. She realized again why they had survived every previous challenge. He did not panic, he did not doubt, and he did not give up. Without a word, he signaled for the group to spread out, using the uneven ground, rocks, and shallow gullies as cover. He moved to the front, scanning for danger, and then paused. A patrol of enemy vehicles had emerged at the far edge of the plain, engines glowing, weapons aimed, and claws flexing with deadly intent. The group froze for a moment, but the human did not flinch. He gestured them forward, using hand signals to indicate timing and movement. She took a deep breath and followed. Every step required care. Every movement was deliberate. She remembered everything he had taught them: observe the terrain, anticipate danger, use the environment, trust instincts. Her fear was still present, but it no longer controlled her. It was a guide, a reminder to stay alert and alive. The pursuers began to advance, confident in their numbers and technology, but the human had other plans. He led the group along a path that twisted unexpectedly, using hidden depressions and scattered rocks to break the enemy's line of sight. When one of the prisoners stumbled, he was there immediately, steadying them, guiding them forward, never losing focus on the larger objective: survival. The enemy was faster and more numerous, but the human strategy was brilliant. He used the terrain to split their forces, forcing them to move in smaller, less coordinated groups. He anticipated every trap, every ambush, every possible attack. She watched in awe as he turned the chase into a calculated game of skill, intelligence, and courage. Every move he made was designed not to dominate with brute strength, but to protect, outsmart, and inspire. A sudden explosion shook the ground nearby. One of the pursuing vehicles had struck a hidden rock formation, tipping over and creating a barrier. The human seized the moment, signaling the prisoners to sprint through the opening. She ran, heart pounding, lungs burning, yet every step carried a growing confidence. They had escaped impossible odds before; they could do it again. As they reached the center of the plain, the enemy regrouped. Claws and weapons raised, they charged with renewed aggression. The human did not hesitate. He moved forward, drawing attention to himself while simultaneously directing the prisoners to safer paths. His actions were precise, fearless, and inspiring. She realized that his courage was not the absence of fear. It was the mastery of it, the ability to act decisively despite it. The group began to fight in small, tactical ways. Some used rocks to block paths, others created distractions by throwing debris. She found herself acting instinctively, using the skills he had taught them to move, evade, and survive. The humans' leadership had transformed them from captives into active participants in their own liberation. Each movement, each decision, each breath was a testament to the power of human ingenuity and courage. The battle intensified as the pursuers pressed forward. The human engaged directly at critical points, using agility, strength, and strategy to disorient the enemies. He did not fight to kill recklessly. He fought to protect, to buy time, to create openings for the prisoners. She followed closely, mimicking his movements, gaining skill and confidence with every encounter. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of motion, strategy, and endurance. The human guided them through traps, ambushes, and dangerous terrain, always thinking several steps ahead. She realized that this was the essence of humanity, the ability to adapt, to survive, to protect others, and to inspire courage even in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, the human led them to a narrow gorge that opened into a canyon filled with dense vegetation. The pursuers hesitated, unsure how to advance through such difficult terrain. The human seized the opportunity. He signaled for the group to move quickly and quietly, using the natural cover to hide their approach. She felt a surge of hope. Freedom was within reach, but it required one final push. They moved with careful precision. Every step was deliberate. Every sound was measured. She felt her body and mind working together, acting on instinct and training. The human's presence was a constant source of guidance, but she realized that she no longer relied on him alone. She was learning to trust herself, to think, to act, and to survive. The pursuers, frustrated by their inability to catch up, began to split forces, leaving openings for the group to exploit. The human directed them toward a narrow exit at the far end of the canyon. She could see it now, a path leading out into the open wilderness, away from the immediate danger. But the exit was guarded, and they would have to act carefully. The human crouched behind a large rock, observing the guards. He whispered instructions to the group, signaling who would move where and when. Every prisoner followed his guidance, trusting in his plan, trusting in themselves, and trusting in one another. She felt a surge of confidence and courage. They were no longer helpless captives. They were a team, moving with strategy, skill, and determination. The final confrontation began. The pursuers attempted to block their path, but the human was always one step ahead. He used the environment to his advantage, creating obstacles, setting distractions, and guiding the prisoners through openings. She moved with focus, placing each step carefully, using everything he had taught them. The battle was intense but not chaotic. Every move had purpose, every action was calculated, every step brought them closer to freedom. As they approached the exit, the human faced the remaining guards directly. His movements were swift, precise, and controlled. He did not fight recklessly. He fought strategically, disabling the guards' weapons and creating openings for the prisoners to pass. She watched in awe as he turned the tide of the confrontation not with brute force alone, but with intelligence, skill, and unwavering courage. One by one, the prisoners crossed the exit, moving into the open wilderness beyond the canyon. She followed, heart pounding, lungs burning, yet filled with exhilaration and hope. The cages, the guards, the darkness of captivity, they were behind her now. She was free, she was alive. She had survived impossible odds, guided by a human who embodied courage, intelligence, and determination. Once they were safely beyond immediate danger, the human gathered them together. He did not speak, but his presence conveyed reassurance, guidance, and pride. The prisoners looked at one another, realizing how far they had come. Fear had been replaced by courage, helplessness by skill, despair by hope. They had learned to survive, to think, to act, and to live. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration for the human warrior. He had not only saved them from the cages, he had taught them how to survive, how to trust themselves, how to act with intelligence and courage, and how to face danger with determination. She realized that freedom was not just the absence of chains. It was the ability to think, to act, and to live fully, even in a world filled with threats. The group continued their journey, moving away from the facility and the canyon toward the distant forests and mountains. The alien world was vast and full of challenges, but they were no longer helpless. They had learned to adapt, to survive, and to trust in themselves and one another. The human led them steadily, always vigilant, always prepared, always inspiring. Along the way, she reflected on everything that had happened. She had been captive for years, believing that hope was a dangerous illusion. But now she understood that hope, courage, and intelligence could overcome even the most impossible odds. She had witnessed the power of humanity, not just in strength, but in mind, strategy, and the ability to inspire others. By midday, they reached a high ridge overlooking a vast expanse of forests and plains. The view was breathtaking, but she did not have time to admire it fully. The humans scanned the horizon, anticipating any remaining threats, planning their next moves. She felt a deep sense of determination. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready. They had survived captivity, pursued by relentless enemies, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable. The human turned to the group, and for a brief moment his eyes met hers. There was no need for words. She understood his message clearly. They had survived, but the journey of life and freedom was ongoing. Courage, intelligence, and determination were not limited to moments of danger. They were a way of living. She felt a deep sense of pride, not only in herself, but in the human warrior and the group they had become together. As they moved forward into the forests below, she realized that the cages of the past were gone. The fear, the despair, and the helplessness had been replaced by courage, skill, and hope. She had been changed forever. The human warrior had shown her what it meant to survive, to fight, and to live with purpose. She would carry that lesson with her always. The alien world was vast and unpredictable, but she no longer feared it. She walked with confidence, strength, and determination. The group followed closely, united by shared experience, trust, and courage. The human led them not just as a guide, but as an example of what humanity could achieve: intelligence, resilience, and unwavering courage, even against impossible odds. And as the sun rose higher, casting light across the forests and plains, she realized that freedom was not simply a destination. It was a way of life. It was the ability to act with intelligence, to survive with courage, and to inspire others to do the same. She had been given a second chance at life, and she would live it fully, guided by the lessons of the human warrior who had changed everything. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The cages, the fear, and the despair were behind her. Ahead lay a world of possibilities, challenges, and adventures. And she knew, without a doubt, that as long as humans existed in the galaxy, hope would never be lost, and freedom would always have a chance.